HR tech, WorkTech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the WorkTech podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by OneWorkTech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to WorkTech. It's me, George LaRocque, and we've got some hot breaking industry news today. Our friend Mike Fitzsimmons is here from Crosschq. And Mike, I'm not going to steal your thunder. Tell us, what have you got to share?
George, thanks for having us, man. We're totally fired up to tell you and your audience that today we're announcing an acquisition of a company called Traitify. And for those of you who don't know who Traitify is, they're a leading provider of behavioral and cognitive assessments, as well as kind of immersive, realistic job previews. Been in business for a bit, and a really, really awesome team of scientists and AI technologists and an incredible client roster. So we're fired up about it. But that's the news of the day.
Congrats. That's big news. I've known Traitify for a long time, and they've done amazing things with making assessments easier, which is why they fit into that whole Frontline world so well. But congrats. Huge news.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We've known the team for a long time as well and have tracked their progress. And man, it's an awesome team and a killer product that I think frankly couldn't be more relevant than today in terms of why it's needed so much. So we're excited about it.
Yeah. So a lot of people wonder how this stuff all comes together, and Fitz reached out, and I've got a deal, but I didn't even know who it was until, like within the last 12 hours or so. And when I came across and you were telling me who it was that we're going to talk about, it was like, oh, Traitify, amazing. It is big news, and we'll get into a little bit of why, but let's back up a little bit. And if you could share for anyone that doesn't know yourself or Crosschq, I mean, I view you as one of the passionate leaders around the quality of hire concept and making good, solid, vetted hiring decisions. So for those new to your journey, maybe give us a 60-second who's Fitz and who's Crosschq.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good context to know sort of why we're so passionate about this opportunity, frankly, broadly around quality of hire. My personal journey as having been CEO of a couple companies prior to starting Crosschq and having hired, I think, in my companies over 5,000 people, I went back and looked at and found during that journey how frustrating it was based upon the fail rates that I was experiencing as an operator. So that's where this whole vision came from, and why there's so much passion about just getting this thing right that we call quality of hire, and just reaffirming that this is a two-sided coin. Why to get it right? I mean, you get it right for the candidate and for talent and for the job seeker. And there's nothing worse than taking on a job that you don't succeed at and you don't enjoy and all those good things. And then we got to get it right for the employer, right? Because fail rates are as high as they have ever been. And so we are incredibly passionate about this whole concept of quality of hire. The Crosschq platform attacks it from two angles. The first angle is creating a system of record by which you can measure this thing called quality of hire. We spend a lot of time and energy on helping companies do that. So at least we have if you can't measure it, you can't fix it, solve. And then we have a suite of applications that we provide to organizations to help them improve it. So those applications begin at the point an applicant applies for a job, right? So we've got upper funnel tools to help with everything from fraud detection to AI interviewing. We've got live interview intelligence in our platform. We've got reference checking in our platform, and we have all of the quality of hire analytics. And now that we've made this acquisition, we brought on two really critical components to that end-to-end solution. The first is obviously the personality, the behavioral and the cognitive assessments. And then the other is the realistic job previews. So when you think about it, when you zoom all the way out and you think about Crosschq today, think about us being able to pick up at the first time you touch that candidate when they're trying to learn more about the actual role to every step in the process to help you get more data to ensure that they're going to be a high quality hire. So that was a mouthful, but that's it.
Yeah. You really, a couple of things about Crosschq that I like is that you've expanded, I think quality of hire, a lot of folks, a lot of HR leaders, talent leaders think about it as a metric, right? So how do I define it? You've really broadened it and it's different from company to company. I remember having those conversations with you really early on, and you've built a platform that allows an employer to sort of turn the dials around what's important to them and measure what's important to them. But now you're in the flow. You're in the hiring flow with the AI interviewing and with the assessment, and so it's not just about there's plenty of signal there, but it's about the outcome as well. You're helping deliver the outcome, which I have to say, it's been a really interesting journey to watch from my seat. So you've evolved. When I first met you, it was digital reference checking, full scale. I think the term you use is hiring intelligence. It fits. I've got that right.
Yeah.
So how does this fit when we think about your platform? Is it modular? Is it, do customers come in and they're given the whole platform? What's the vision beyond we talked about the what, but what's the vision around the platform for Crosschq today with this acquisition?
Yeah, it's funny when you look at any market map for any of our colleagues in the analyst community and your head starts to spin and you look at all these different categories and there was this talent intelligence thing, interview intelligence thing, there's this assessment bucket, there's all this stuff happening, right? And so I would say that if you look at any market map and you take those 5 or 6 cohorts, our goal is to put that into one thing and allow our customers to purchase from one vendor, right? Kind of any area or an application to help them get more intelligence on their hires in any of those distinct components, right? And so you absolutely can purchase our solution in a modular basis, and you can purchase the application that you want to purchase, right, for your particular acute point of pain. Certainly our vision is, right, and where we see all of this coming together, and frankly, why Traitify is such an exciting asset for us. We had been working with Paradox for a number of years. Our existing technology is well integrated into the Paradox system, Olivia, their chatbot, et cetera. And if any of you are familiar with Traitify and their relationship with Paradox, that was also one of the very cool things that they do is we can actually get a candidate into a behavioral assessment completed in 60 seconds within the flow of work of the apply process, which is pretty amazing, right? And so when we think about this, we're like, hey, that's the first step in the process. But think about what then we can do immediately after that. We can launch an AI interview directly after the behavioral assessment if they've cleared the hurdle, right? And then we can follow that up with the hiring manager interview and providing full interview intelligence to the hiring manager while they're conducting that interview. And then we can hit the reference check piece if you want to do that. And all along the way, we're able to detect if there's any fraud or bad actors, right? So from a workflow perspective and what we think it's all going to look like, we view it as one unit of thing. I talked a little bit earlier about the realistic job previews that the Traitify team, that product that they've brought to market, which is awesome. Man, we imagine a world where you could compress this all into that. You could compress, I'm watching the realistic job preview. I can ask immersive questions of that using our AI interviewer. I can compare my behavioral assessment results with the reality of what the job is. We certainly view the next chapter of this whole thing looking much more integrated than the today chapter. But again, a long-winded answer to your question, today, each of our applications at an application level can be purchased, right, if you have acute pain for one of those points. But the vision for us is you got to bring it all together, right? Because the human being applying for the job is one person, and there's a whole lot of intelligence we're trying to gather. And the way we do that today is so fragmented. It really is. And if you even look in Workday today, how if a company is using this company for this piece, this company for that piece, this company for that piece, this company for that piece, you try to go into Workday and look at that at the candidate card view, you're like, I don't even know how to connect all these dots, right? The scale of measurement is different, right? From this vendor, there's no underlying anything. So anyway, that's what we want to ultimately solve for our customers is that problem, right? You should have one vendor that can solve this for you end to end and have it all validated by science and have data to back it up.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Paradox relationship because I think a lot of the market might not realize that Traitify had become a part of Paradox, and as Paradox was folded into Workday, I know this is new news for us, but it's been coming for a while here for Crosschq making this acquisition, and so that's the backstory there. But I spent a lot of time with Traitify over the years, and there are other interviews we've done here The thing about Traitify is their product is super validated from a behavioral science perspective. So the core product I know is visual, sort of they've taken, the big five and taken it into a picture-based format. That's how they got to that initial 60 seconds. Now they did a lot of testing with a new avatar, controversial, but it's vetted, tested, validated scientifically. And the whole thing is that every other assessment that I see on the market still looks like the classic, SaaS interface. This is anything but that. And that experience for the candidate is greatly improved. So I'm excited that you get to bring that into the fold, because I've been doing this a long time. I'm a big believer in behavioral assessments, and theirs is the one that doesn't suck, or yours now is the one that doesn't suck.
No, it's amazing. Look, and that's one of the things that's so funny. We also think the timing couldn't be better because there's so much activity upper funnel with AI, like matching and screening and all this stuff. And we're just kind of like churning on the same bits of data and coming up with slightly altered results. And we're like, you're just missing, you got to feed the machine with more intelligence. I mean, that is the core of the whole thing, is we need a deeper view into the candidate and the candidate's fit for the role. It really is. So I'm glad you're advocating for the product itself. We're excited about the science underlying it. What we have seen as a little bit of the old guard in this category, we understand all the compliance issues. We understand what the CRA is. We understand why Eightfold's being sued, right? We get all of that. We know how sensitive the whole screening process is. And so we also understand how important science is. We also understand how critical your science being paired with outcome data is. George, our good friend Keith Sunderling, I have these conversations with him frequently. And he's like, dude, you guys are on the right side of history, because none of these other vendors can actually prove that the outcomes they're recommending are connected to any outcome training. He's like, the second you can actually prove, that's all we want to know as the folks that are coming after you on this stuff, is that you're right, that it's actually using outcome data. It's not using some black box. And anyway, I bring that up just because one of the big attractions for us to this asset was the team, Heather, their team of PhDs, Stanford PhDs who understand this stuff. And we have Dr. Hunt, who we wrote the book on quality of hire. And when we put all those guys together, it's like a mini PSYOP convention. But we view that as a muscle and an asset. As the world enters into this category, we actually think that having human scientists on staff who are validating all the AI tools that we're building, we think it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I get that. I've met her. I've done some calls with her. She's, the thing that she shares, and I think culturally they share with you is, putting that, you've said it a couple of times here, putting that human first, that candidate first. And while you're helping the employer achieve an outcome that's, explainable, defendable, all of that, it's not at the expense of a bad experience for the candidate. And that bringing that approach is key. So you talked a little bit about the timing in the market. What else is happening? I've got my own assumptions, but when you think about the landscape right now with, AI, everything's coming on so fast. What were some of the things, market-based, things happening that led you to this now? Was it the assessment tech, or does this, pull you deeper into the flow, the workflow? What are some of those issues in the market?
Yeah. So I'll go up high on the macro
Okay.
side before we go a little lower. But dude, we've been pushing this quality of hire rock up a hill, it has felt like, for a bunch of years. And whether it was other things that were priorities for companies, I will say that, 5 years ago, it was butts and seats quickly. It was almost like a mark of success the more people you hired, right? Especially with like earlier stage tech companies. It was almost laughable. And then you had sort of the D&I movement, and there was that was a bigger priority, right? And so like quality, like real quality and outcomes, just no one was acknowledging how important it is. And frankly, most TA leaders that we would go talk to would look at us like, dude, the last thing I need is another metric that I'm not accountable for. Leave me alone. right? And that has changed. It has fundamentally changed. And LinkedIn came out in their annual report said finally it's the number one most important thing. Elon doing some of the stuff he did in the tech community, just like with the stuff with X and letting go of most of the company and maintaining performance. And then you layer in the advent of AI and the automation and the ability. So the my point on all of that at a macro level is that awareness about the return on human capital investments is at the right spot for a company like Crosschq to be highly relevant,
Yep.
right? People care. They actually are doing the math now and they care. And even we talked briefly in the frontline market, man, we don't, we get 70 million hires a year in the US and frontline. And, some of those, there's 100% fail rate with many restaurants, et cetera. I think the average fail rate is over 50%, right?
Yep.
So the math on that, you don't have to move the dial much, right? You really don't to have a material impact to the bottom line of these organizations. So I think that's the big macro piece is just this fundamental alignment that, return on human capital investments needs to be there.
Yep. So, how do you see this move impacting your customers? Obviously there's another product in the kit, but how will this be rolled out? What's the impact for customers?
Yeah, what's really fun is we have a couple of shared customers already that were like, when we kind of previewed this with them, they're like, yeah, of course, let's go, right? So
Yeah.
think about a user like a customer of ours. I'll take a specific customer because he's actually quoted in our press release of like AAA, right? Uses Crosschq extensively now, and they used us. They started with us to build out their quality of hire analytics capabilities, just connecting all their pre-hire and their post-hire data in Workday and enabling them to stand up a measurement for quality of hire. Now they have that. They also signed a deal with Traitify and they're onboarding Traitify. Well, guess what we can do on day one? We can actually connect all of that assessment data with the quality of hire data, and we can understand and tune the assessment to make sure that it's doing its job. Right.
Yeah.
And when you think historically about how an organization has gone and bought some assessment from some third party, and then that company comes in and says, hey, we're going to prove to you it works. And they do their own siloed analysis, right? But there's not a system by which you can connect all these dots. So what our customers can benefit from is having a system of record for measuring quality of hire. Then they can choose from any of the applications that we offer, and we can all figure out together, right? What's working, what's not working, tune them, right? So they're actually working for them long term. And I think that really is from our investors' perspective. And let's shift into that mindset. This might sound overly ambitious, but we believe we're building sort of the foundation models for hiring. We actually believe that all of this data, we have an incredibly unique data set. We think no one else in the world can touch it. Traitify has now done over 50 million assessments where we actually
Wow.
have behavioral assessments on 50 million people, right? You pair that with all the outcome data, you pair that with all the other data we're going to be getting out of AI interviews and fraud detection and reference checks, and you just put all of that together and just imagine a world where we can actually provide this foundation model for an organization that is trained on their data, right? Like back to the AAA example, that's constantly learning and constantly adjusting, right? It's not a static thing that we put in, at the beginning of the year, we came back and measured it a year later. That's the machine that we envision, and we think customers need it. And we think customers in this day and age are going to need it more than ever as the world changes, and their requirements change. But that's the big vision. That's the take over the world vision. But today, in terms of how it will feel for customers, look, they're going to get pricing leverage. They're going to be able to buy from one vendor. They're going to have an easier time getting through procurement, right? They're going to
Yep.
see all these pieces connect. They're going to have an analytics layer that connects all of it, right? So they don't have to go to bespoke third parties for understanding if stuff's working or not. So I think there's hopefully a lot of good connected value, if you will, for customers right out of the gate. And when I talk about the take over the world vision, where we think this can go, it gets pretty exciting.
Yeah. So, you've talked about, the team coming on board, the sort of, the scientists that are going to mind meld. We've talked about the big vision for the market. Is there a roadmap that you've already got in play right now? Are we, you probably can't tell me, but what's the next big move for Crosschq?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. Look, so as part of this transaction, Workday is extremely supportive of this, and Crosschq is now a platinum partner of Workday.
Oh, that's
So what
great.
does that mean? That means that, Workday's team, and your audience probably understand this, Well, it means a couple things. It gives us kind of unique access to integrate with Workday, to have more access to their developers, to understand the Workday roadmap better, to make sure that our stuff is matching up well. It also means that their sales team is out in the field selling our complete Crosschq solution set. So those are really cool things for us and good validation around Workday. So to answer your question, one of the things that it absolutely means for like Workday users, we're putting a lot of not, we're not abandoning the other ATSs that we serve by any stretch, but we are putting a lot of effort into making sure that our integrations with both Paradox and Workday are absolutely awesome and are as tight and great as they can be, right?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of enterprise users of that solution that are looking for some, some better ways to manage the candidate flow post-apply kind of pre-offer. So that's going to happen. I think from a product perspective, the thing that is really cool that we're working on, and look, it's complex and talk about science meets AI, but this concept of how I aggregate the candidate view and put all of this data together and actually predict an outcome,
Yep.
right? We have this working in our lab for sure, where we can take in all of this data and to a 99 percentile degree of confidence predict what type of performer this person will be, even how long they might last in a frontline role, right? So you can imagine, like, that's the kind of the last piece of the puzzle here is, okay, you've helped me gather all this great intelligence, you've helped inform my recruiters and my hiring managers with data, but can you really help me pull all that together? Because at the end of the day, if we don't, we're going to be back to the human brain making a decision based upon, I don't know, the hiring manager's last interview with the candidate, because that's probably what happens 9 out of 10. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
Yep.
that's going to be really cool. And if you can't imagine a problem or an opportunity better built for AI and an LLM in a responsible, ethical manner of connecting all of that hiring intelligence and ultimately predicting an outcome with a high degree of confidence.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really cool. I'm excited to see that. I know there's a lot of movement into that whole voice world, which you're also, deep into as well. We could have done a whole, podcast just on what you're doing with voice at the top of the funnel. So I'm excited to watch Crosschq. Remind me your URL. You've got something funky hanging off the end of Crosschq, or are you all right. I always ask and people say, well, we've got a website, and it's like, well, everybody's does this, .ai,
We're
.io.
right. We're old school. But I will say one thing on the voice side that you bring up, because this is a piece that we've been working with the Traitify team on. Like, imagine a world if we can mimic what they did with the images in a voice environment to come up with a behavioral and cognitive. Just think about that for a second. I'll keep going back to this. It's like one unit of thing. We're trying to get intelligence on our candidate. We don't need to put them through like 6 different touch points to actually try to get to this unit of thing, right? And I think that's the part. These are more like at an agent level product roadmap items, but I certainly see how voice can impact. I mean, we're doing that now with our reference checking solution, like same concept, like, right? I mean, all of the power of voice is pretty amazing to help improve all of these different agents. So, but you're right, we could go on a whole other cycle.
Yeah, that's true. So I want to thank you for your time and for telling this story, sharing the news on WorkTech. Everybody's got the URL. I'll link to some of the previous chats that we've had and the Traitify stuff in the show notes. And yeah, thanks, Fitz. Congrats.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you.
All right.